Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sloppy Lab. I'm JT Russell, and if you've been looking for numbers 1, 2, and 6, look no further. They're under your tokens, and I got a man here with me tonight who knows all about that. Welcome, Quick Draw 3457. Yeah.
Hey, good evening, Mr. JT Russell. Good to be back here again this week.
Back in the Sloppy Lab. Uh, uh, hey, welcome, Dataforge Stream. Welcome to the chat. Welcome, folks. Yeah, my brother couldn't join us tonight. I think, and I have to apologize. We had a snafu with our audio recording last time, and I think he got the short end of the stick on how the audio turned
Uh-oh.
out.
I haven't listened to it yet. Is he just muted the whole time? Because if
No,
so, I
no,
don't think that was an accident.
no, not muted. I think he was just a little bit quieter on the single stream, But so,
You know,
well, I guess I
as
should
they say
really
around here.
stay sloppy.
That's right.
Yeah, I was gonna say I should apologize for all the ones that come out well. It's the ones that don't come out right, where you're actually getting what was on the label.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is episode 48. Still working out the kinks.
hmm When the kinks are gone, we're all done. We have to stop.
Yeah, for real.
For real.
Uh, that means we're approaching almost 1 year. That's
Getting there.
insane.
Getting there. Have to do
We're getting
something.
old, JT.
Well, we were already old. Now the podcast is getting old too.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we have a good one in store for this evening. I'm curious to see where it goes. I think there's a lot more we could build off of too. But it's an interesting topic, probably one that's on a lot of folks' mind, and may even harken back to some hot takes that we had made before. I'm thinking of one that I had said. We'll see if I fess up to it when the time comes.
Now I
Uh,
gotta go look it up, figure out what that was.
yep.
I'll be right back while I listen to that episode.
Mm-hmm. Through the magic of editing, we're already back.
Oh man, that was a terrible take you had back then, man.
They were all bad.
Whew.
They're all bad.
Actually, I'm pretty happy with my house tiers. When we did that back in probably was that like January, I think we ranked those. Um, Pretty pleased with how mine played out, and I'm also pretty pleased with my one take about Equidon being like in all of the top cuts for WoE events because that's relevant here. And I think everyone's favorite card in Equidon is the Prospector token, and that's very relevant to what we're going to talk about tonight. Um, and I will also preface this by saying I think this might be the most important Winds of Exchange content that anyone has heard.
Okay. Now
I
my
think
interest
this
is
is
piqued.
you said that this is something that's probably already on people's minds, and I'm not sure if it is. I think I don't think this is being talked about enough. I think people are enamored with the power of WoE and the high floor that decks seem to have, and the crazy board states that they get. But I think this is an element that is not being talked about enough, and so hopefully we kind of make people think about it a little bit differently
Mm-hmm.
by the time they're done with this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see where you're going with that. I definitely agree. Um, my brain was lower functioning. So we obviously don't have logos in Winds of Exchange, and how the set holds up without logos is a thing that we're maybe thinking on. And before I had actually put Star Alliance really high on my house rating list. I think I ranked Star Alliance pretty high, primarily
Yeah,
because uh, I was thinking it might give us some of that efficiency that we are losing with the departure of logos.
was
Um,
that your bad take, or does it get worse than that?
I think that's the bad take. I think that's the bad
Okay.
take.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, that's excusable. I think you had sound logic there. I don't hold that one against you. Star Alliance has always been a very good house, so
Mm-hmm.
it would have made sense for that to kind of step in to replace Logos. But I don't think that's the case. There is some good Star Alliance stuff we'll talk about tonight, but I think Equidon is where we're going to focus a lot of this discussion tonight.
And you'll appreciate this too. I have a bunch of Keyforge house pins. You know,
Yeah.
I'm wearing my Sloppy Lab work pin right now, so representing the lab. But I have a bunch of house pins. Actually, a number of them gifted from Not Tonight. Thank you very much. And a few others that I picked up to kind of fill in the houses that I was missing. But I was going to wear the Logos pin this evening. I got the Logos pin right here.
That would have been a good move.
Would have been fitting. And as I was putting it on, the post on the back snapped off.
Mm.
And it's like, how fitting is
Who
that?
needs logos anyway, right?
Who needs logos anyway? Yeah, we had a bunch of interesting potential names for this episode. Who needs logos anyway? I really liked the FWO, like for efficiency and woe, but very clickbaity version. I don't know. Felt a little bit.
Yeah, we have not jumped the shark yet fully. Just mostly.
Mostly.
So yeah, so if you haven't picked up on it yet, we are going to talk about efficiency in Winds of Exchange tonight. Without logos, I think in the past everyone would agree you're always looking to logos for your card draws, your archives, your phase shift type cards, your think twice ways to just play many cards, draw many cards, archive cards, keep it going forever, and we don't have that anymore. So there is a gap in the efficiency. Like, where is that coming from now in Winds of Exchange? And the short answer is that it's not anything. Like, you're not going to replace logos. You have to find different ways to have that efficiency. And so we're going to kind of talk about what different types of efficiency there are in the set, and maybe some of the pitfalls of the lack of efficiency mean for some of even the best WoE decks.
Totally. Totally. So maybe let's start with a nice concrete definition of efficiency, right? Like, I think it's one of those English words that's also a term of art in the Keyforge world. So we're specifically going to be homing in on kind of the DOK, the old Dexa Keyforge F score efficiency definition. You may be, I mean, I have it right in front of me, but you may want the honors, Quick Draw, as our resident SaaS architect to give us this one.
Busted. Yeah, so according to Dex of Keyforge, efficiency is increased by effects that allow you to play extra cards. It is reduced by cards that prevent you from playing or drawing cards, or like cards that give chains or bad penny. And then it's really about archiving is worth 1 point. A card of your choice, archiving a card of your choice is 1.5. Drawing a card in general is worth 0.75. So that's why you see like an Infomorph has 2 draw pips, worth 1.5F. And then discarding a card, which is typically a card you're not that's out of house. Discarding a card is worth half. So like they have all these calculations for it, and it's made to be very consistent as far as like every card that draws will get you exactly the same. Uh, but there's going to be some differences now in Winds of Exchange and some other ways to find efficiency that we're going to touch on. I think the one that's new that's introduced is like the self bounce, as we're kind of calling it, or just bounce. Historically, that would have not have been considered efficiency, like transporter platform as a way to take a card back into hand, because it's not really the DOK definition of efficiency. But when you throw into tokens into the mix, it kind of is, because a token is a card that you otherwise haven't seen, it hasn't been in your hand yet, it's coming from your deck. And if you have a way of using your entire token board as like an archive or sort of a sideboard, so to speak, and if you have the tools to take those back into hand, that's a new type of efficiency that I don't think has been really talked about or explored yet. And it's why it's a two-sided sword here. Like on one edge, you have uh, all these tokens, you have a great board, and you have so many things you can do with that, like reap or fight or do nothing if you have a blorb, things like that. But the other side of that is that if you have a strange shell, for example, or a sandhopper, or a transporter platform, or even the outposts, you have ways to find cards that you need, or at least put them in a place where you know where they are. And I think that's a different type of efficiency that is going to lend itself to uh, allowing you to become a more consistent player in Winds of Exchange than you would otherwise if you don't have any means to access those cards, or if you aren't really thinking about that. So that's where we're going to go with tonight. We are not going to focus on Prospector. I think everyone knows and loves Prospector already. Everyone opens a deck and wants Prospector. And when you don't have it, you're immediately disappointed. I feel you. And so we can talk about draws as well. So like the old school type of efficiency of drawing cards, archiving cards is still there, just in kind of lesser numbers than it used to be whenever we had logos.
Yeah, feels like much lesser numbers. I mean, I do have a prospector deck that I'm very excited about. I am enjoying the bounce that you touched on, which wasn't kind of traditionally considered efficiency, but I'm finding myself playing a whole lot of games with Winds of Exchange where I may have one card in archives total over the course of the game, and it's one of the token generators that archives itself. It's not like hey, archive this card and tuck it to archive this answer or this combo piece and tuck it for later. It's kind of more more token generation. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, interesting, very interesting. Definitely a downtick on some of those other pieces.
Yeah. By my count, and this could be wrong, and not counting those token generators that archive themselves, I counted 5 cards that archive, like a targeted archive in this set. Um, One of them is Researcher, which is a token itself. And then you have Ganymede Outpost, Recorded History, Incubation Chamber, which is somewhat similar to the Researcher, and then Psionic Officer Lang, which is a random card off the top of your deck. I may have missed some, but those are the main ones. And I believe you had up on the screen a deck I have with triple Ganymede Outpost that Data Forge Stream was salivating over at the start of the show. I will tell you,
Mm-hmm.
Data Forge Stream, that that deck was being shown as a red herring. That deck is you look at this and according to DOK, this is strikingly inexplicable Harik. It is a triple Ganymede Outpost deck, and it has 15 speed, 15 efficiency, and that's largely because of the triple outpost. However, it has 13 creatures, and it has just a 9 expected tokens. So it doesn't really create big boards. And what that means is that you're going to kind of struggle to use the outpost as much as you want if you're constantly taking off the few pieces that you have on your board in order to archive a few cards. And really in this deck, like what are you archiving? There's not really a huge payoff except for maybe a mass buyout closed door negotiation.
Yeah, it chumps out.
But yeah, but you don't have very many creatures to really take advantage of the mass buyout. You're really going to like allow them to have a bigger board, allow them to gain just so you can steal some of them from the closed door. So this deck is kind of interesting because the 15 speed is it's not as sweet as it seems. But I'm sure there are lots of decks out there that can make bigger boards that have 2 or maybe 3 outposts and can use them much better than this one can.
Yeah, interesting too how this is sort of a not a bounce mechanism per se, but also using your board as a pseudo archive of sorts because it's consuming, maybe not tokens, but some of your other creatures. And in this deck, that resource is in short supply. You've got 10 pips, like an expected number of 16. So you're probably looking to do some reaping or
Yeah,
making some amberlings, right? And gobbling up those creatures to enable your outpost. I mean, Ganymede Outpost is real nice, but you feel the other edge of that blade.
right.
Yeah.
And the outposts are cool. Like they allow you to plan ahead, a few turns and to put stuff that you might need in the bottom of your deck. You get the
Mm-hmm.
benefit right now, but you also maybe you're targeting a specific token that has a card that you're looking for later, like a Rant and Rive or a Closed Door Negotiation. Put on the bottom there, you know exactly where it is. The trick then is getting there at the right time and also making sure that you don't tokenize it accidentally, whether your opponent makes you tokenize things or, if you're kind of down to your last 2 cards and you kind of really want to play your visible hand and get those prospectors, but you also want to draw that mass buyout, then you have a tough decision to make. Um, you may
Mm-hmm.
not be able to get to it. So I do think the outposts are very skill testing cards. They have very good benefits for the most part, but they're a slower type of efficiency, and they're not like traditional efficiency, but they do allow you to potentially find some of the answers that you're looking for later.
Yeah, I think my favorite one. Well, it's definitely between the Star Alliance and the Equidon Outpost. The Mars one gets a honorable mention in my book, but I love the Equidon one, especially as you're at the bottom of your deck already. You smash a bunch of tokens out there, your deck's empty. Now your Equidon Outpost is almost a pseudo bounce, right? Because you put a creature on the bottom, immediately draw it
Yep.
with some others too. So they're cool. They're definitely valuable. I think they also lend to the efficiency options that we've got out there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And speaking of the buggy, or sorry, the Equidon Outpost, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce those. They're all like such similar names that it's kind of confusing. You have to just look at them every time to understand which one you're looking at. But there is, excuse me, a decent number of draw in the set. Prospector and Scholar, two of the tokens that provide that efficiency. Scholar's a lot of fun. We played a
Mm-hmm.
Scholar game last week here, and if you have a Legionary trainer with it, you can actually get some really nice efficiency out of Saurian, which is not something that you were really ever able to do before, except for Dilophosaurus. Um, but then there's other things like Hings. Hings is back. Hings and Gross. You don't have the Triska, but with a bigger board, if it does survive, you are looking at a lot of card draws right there. In fact, I just played a Newton game for Time Shapers League yesterday, and my opponent had double Hings, double Gross, and making a big board. And I never knew this, but apparently you can get all four of them out guaranteed as soon as you find one of them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's
They just
insane.
daisy chain each other. Yeah.
Yeah, crazy. Um,
Oh
so yeah, they can definitely get some card draws going if they can't be handled right away.
yeah. And I mean, there's no Triska to kind of ready them, but Cadet with Hings and Gross is gonna be a thing. Yeah.
Good one. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely a good one. So let's just talk about Prospector. Get it out of the way. Move
Ye old
on.
prospector.
Yeah, we each have some spicy Prospector decks that we really like. It's a lot of fun to draw a ton of cards. My favorite card to go with it is a mass buyout, just to like you make a bunch of tokens and then you draw a bunch of cards. If you have the Esquire with it as well, it gets really crazy because you mass buyout everything, you draw a ton, you still make a new board immediately, so your whole board's replenished. And if they wipe it again to get rid of your prospectors, then you're drawing even more cards. So Prospector is interesting because like I personally find in most prospector decks I've seen, you want a big payoff. You want to draw a ton of cards at once. You
Mm-hmm.
don't want to draw like one extra card a turn. So if you're playing against it, I will say I think the best strategy is to kill them as they come out. Try to get rid of them as fast as possible, because as we all know from like previous draw pips discussions, if you have a single draw pip, it's only going to help you on average like roughly 1 in 3 times, and because you need to draw the house that you're looking for. So if your prospectors keep dying, there's only a 1 in 3 chance that you're getting a house that you're either in or about to go into. Maybe it changes your house call the next turn if they kill it and you draw into something. But what you're really looking for is a big wipe where you draw like 5 or 6 cards at once, and that really sets you up for the next turn to have a very large hand of a single house the next turn. So um, there is some strategy that goes into playing with and against them, and I think the biggest piece of advice I'd give anyone playing against them is to just try to kill them as fast as possible.
Yeah. Kill them on sight. I mean, you almost would rather give your opponent a permanent daughter than a Martian generosity turn. It's kind of what it
Yeah,
comes down to as a
or like a reap for 6, and then
or a reap for 6. Yeah, and it's a problem that just grows the longer it lingers, right? So it's a tricky one. It is obviously a really great card. There's not many great options once they start flowing, but I think yeah,
yeah,
generally biting the bullet and getting rid of them is the way to
yeah.
go for sure.
So what is it, like 1 in 28 decks or prospector decks, roughly something like that?
I don't know, man. I'm opening 1 in 10 right now, so
Yeah, you look at you.
mm-hmm.
Share the love, share the wealth, spread the wealth. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you're not fortunate enough to get a prospector deck, or if your prospector deck is not as spicy as Fudginators that he opened yesterday with an Eaton's jar in it, then you have to look elsewhere. And you're showing good Fina right now, which is one of the first decks that I opened in Winds of Exchange, so you can see how lucky I am with the set. But this one, like the kind of combos, if you don't kill these prospectors right away, and I'll spill the beans a little bit on this one. It's got the Esquire, it's got double mass buyouts, it's got 2 visible hands, so you're able to rebuild your prospectors very quickly. It has Harmala Tune in Brobnar, which means when all of your Brobnar creatures die, they go back to your hand.
Mm-hmm.
So if they don't handle all of these threats that you're throwing out there immediately, they're going to mass buyout. And when they mass buyout with the Esquire and with Harmal, that means they're going to create tokens for every Brobnar creature. They're going to bounce every Brobnar creature back to their hand. And they are going to have a huge board of prospectors with a giant board of Brobnar ready to go in their hand. Um, and so, like, what do you do against that? Like, if you wipe a board of prospectors, they're going to get an even bigger hand. So, like, there's so many like threats to look out for with prospector decks, that it's going to take some time, I think, for players to figure out like all of the different things that you can do. But the big ones that stick out to me are the Esquire, the mass buyout, um, and just closed door negotiation. That's what this deck's missing, is a closed door negotiation where you might give your opponent a ton of amber, but you can just steal half of it right back. So um, those are the scariest things to look for with prospectors, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious with this deck, how often do you find yourself wanting to call Equidon? Like, I'm alluding to something maybe a little bit down the road, but do you feel yourself wanting to call Equidon 4 turns out of 7 in a 7-turn game, or is it sort of like a?
Um, it depends on what stage. Like early in the game, I typically don't want to call Equidon.
Hmm.
Um, if I have like a mass buyout in hand, I want to hold it for the right time. Um, you obviously want the Sandhopper set up early so
Yep.
that you can take advantage of it when you need to. And that's kind of a good segue to talk about the Sandhopper and how it might be one of the most important cards, I think, in Winds of Exchange. It may not be the best; it's very good, but this is a combo deck, and there's a lot of WoE combo decks. And not only that, there's a lot of WoE decks that are relying on finding the right card at the right time. Which like probably like a Rant and Rive is one, a closed door negotiation. There's a lot of very important cards like that where like if you don't find them, you're going to get outrushed and you're going to lose. And the Sandhopper, like we talked about, this is that new type of efficiency that lets you look at your entire like sideboard of tokens that's right in front of you, the second part of your hand, and just pick which one you want to take back. And it's so hugely important. Sandhopper, transporter platform, and then a few other ways to self bounce. Like you may not think about it as much, but like Dragnet, which is a card that you really think of as disruption from
Mm-hmm.
Unfathomable, can really be used to your advantage as some efficiency if you have like a bunch of tokens right next to each other that are actually like really important cards you want to take back.
Yep.
Um, and then a bit slower than that, but also the self bounce. I would also count Adult Swim and Maelstrom um, as a slower way to find them if you really are in a pinch and you need to like get those back.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have a Strange Shell deck that makes use of Maelstrom, and I do often find myself managing my board. Well, one to take advantage of Whirlpool, but two to be set up for as advantageous as possible Whirlpool, not Whirlpool, Maelstrom. um,
Yeah,
yeah, because it's just extra creatures that aren't doing much just are extra creatures that aren't doing much, and you don't want to be clumped with the Maelstrom. So I think it is a world where Maelstrom gets a whole lot of extra value, both as an answer to some things like Prospector, but also as a way to recover some cards that got tucked under tokens that you may be hurting to not draw.
yeah. And what a difference one set makes for Maelstrom. Like in
Oh
Dark
yeah,
Tidings, it was kind of like often a discard.
often
Um,
discard. Hmm.
Very hard to find good synergy with it in Dark Tidings, but here it's like it's almost never a discard in Winds of Exchange because you're always dealing with huge boards. You're always trying to find certain cards and get them back. So it's just a hugely important card, very powerful card that has gotten better with some age,
Hmm.
which is very cool.
Yeah, it's cool to see. Um,
Yeah,
Very cool to see. But yeah, I do love Sandhopper. I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure. I'd say like you, it's the best card in the set, but it's probably one of the strongest role players out there, or enablers to reclaim some of that choice back from the efficiency, or along with the efficiency. My go-to prospector deck currently also has a Sandhopper, and it is very different. The games where Sandhopper is allowed to stick around versus where it gets destroyed.
yeah,
It's just kind of night and day the options that are available to you, especially if you're spewing out these tokens It almost feels like, yeah, river of cards. Being able to pick and choose from the ones that get tokenized is a huge boon. Huge boon.
Yeah. And you mentioned Strange Shell. Strange Shell is, I think, a pretty underrated token. And again, it's Equidon. We're talking a lot about Equidon having a lot of this efficiency replacing the logos. Strange Shell is, I think, an incredibly good card. They definitely stick around. They've got 4 armor. They're pretty hard to kill. And if you're lucky enough to have your Mollusk Color survive, which is a 4 power, 4 armor creature,
Mm-hmm.
then you have like a huge threat from bursting and using your board. But even if you can't get there, the Strange Shell itself is it is literally like an archive, and you can only pull that archive on your Equidon turns. But being able to do that and find the right card at the right time is hugely skill testing, and this is absolutely real efficiency by being able to self bounce this token like that. Highly underrated card. It makes you not afraid to tokenize because
Mm-hmm.
you're not afraid of like if you put something there that you want, as long as that card survives, it's a good thing. And it's pretty hard to read as the opponent like which one of their tokens do you need to kill. Like some of them might be important cards, but like how many options do you have? Um, you're showing right now Ensign Trashman, which is a fantastic deck. Plays a ton of the strange shells. It's got 2 closed door negotiation. It's got double Harmala Tune. Um, it's just this is a really fun deck to watch. It's not fun to play against because it's very strong. But it is so interesting when you're kind of like evaluating a large board of strange shells and you take like 2 of them back, but you don't play anything else that turn.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, what's going on? Like, what's being planned? And sometimes you may have to go out of your way to call Ecuadon to get them, but it may also be worth it. So super cool card, I think. Strange Shell deserves more love, I think, than it gets.
Yeah, I mean, it gets a decent amount of hate. There are a lot of Strange Shell detractors. I'm on the Strange Shell bus, man. I like this card. It feels. I think the like second archive metaphor is pretty apt. It feels like having an archive with the archivist kind of already there. You know, like yes, you can only pull it on your Equidon turns, but fine.
Yeah.
Fine. I'm okay with that. There may come a time when folks are actively fighting down strange shells, but that also feels like winning. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Um, if decks have lots of creature control, it might take a little bit of Ensign Trashman's firepower out, but it's also a rush deck. So it's like 18 pips here, triple fresh marks, like so many ways to just make Amber fast. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very versatile deck. It's got the Whirlpool as well, which I love, with the Double Shrewd Investor. It really attacks at so many different angles, and this is, I guess this is sort of like adjacent to efficiency, but like this is a fairly consistent deck because it has so many different things that it can do. It's not all in on one game plan like so many Winds of Exchange decks are. I have a really fun Hallowfest deck with Cadet, and it has like this massive combo where you just like Cadet a bunch of tokens and Brobnar creatures, and I've made like 17 Amber in a turn before. The deck doesn't have a fantastic secondary plan, so that doesn't come together, it might struggle a bit. But like a deck like this, I think we're going to see the strongest Winds of Exchange decks are the ones that are the most consistent,
Mm-hmm.
and the consistency will be aided by efficiency, but there are other ways of finding that consistency as well.
No, I think that's right. I think we're going to see the strongest decks emerging be ones that have a lot of strategic redundancy, whether that's lots of multiples of the same card that are really pivotal to the plan, or they just don't care about specific cards. Like Ensign Trashman wants to jam pips, uh, maybe throw out some disruption, but really jamming pips is the game plan, and it uses these shells to make sure it's having power turn after power turn. Um, and sure, like Whirlpool comes online, you can send a shrewd investor across, um, but but the game plan itself isn't sort of combo oriented, and I think having this like high amount of strategic consistency means not only do I get to get my cards back with the shells, but I'm also less worried about tokenizing specific pieces. I think that's going to be kind of a hallmark of some of the stronger decks that we see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've found many games where I might only have like one really good piece of creature control or one good piece of scaling amber control, and sure enough, it's made a token, and there's nothing I can do about it. So as we play more, we're going to be asking ourselves more regularly, like, should I just discard this visible hand to make sure that I don't tokenize a card that I need that I can't get back? You know, I've only seen one player so far, and kudos to them. This was Dinobot in a blorb deck, avoiding making blorbs because the deck he was playing just did not really go like go for the blorb hive free key. Um, it instead he was kind of just not making blorbs on purpose to make sure that he drew the cards that he wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a very interesting strategy that I think as people play decks more and they get to know them more, I think they're going to be doing that. I haven't been able to like get rid of that temptation of my mind to be like, but I can make two creatures. Like, why would I not do that? I haven't been able to break that yet, but I think I'm going to get there. Because I am feeling often frustrated at like not being able to find the cards that I need when I need them in this set. And so I think the natural adjustment is to, you know, maybe I don't need all these tokens. Maybe I'll just play other cards.
Folks, we all know Quick Draw 3457 loves discarding cards, but it was the tokens that got him. Can't resist playing those tokens.
It's I don't know. Maybe it's just part of our discovery. I'll blame it on that. You know, like I have a definite like when I get to a new set or sometimes even a new deck, I just play every card. I don't care if it's a bad card, because if it messes me up, I want to learn that. I want to learn, is this card bad? I played a corner of the market in one of my first games. I think it's the one that says opponent cannot play cards the next turn,
Mm-hmm.
and they just archive everything. And I don't think it was a good situation to play it, but I wanted to see how bad could it be. And I think it's an important learning process, especially if you're not familiar with specific cards, to just see what happens. And my experience is that I am going to tokenize the cards that I need. So we'll see if I can adjust from that.
Yeah, it'll be a learning process. I mean, I think we all kind of collectively went through the journey of like, how often should I play cards versus hold them? And there's the new player thing. Well, wow, I want to hold this for the perfect time, and I'm just gonna sit and wait and chain myself. And then you go through the
And
like,
then 6 turns of life web in your hand.
yeah, 6 turns of life web in your hand, or and then we go through the like, I'm just gonna play all the card every time as soon as I get it, no holding anything, and then you settle somewhere in the middle, likely at the end. We're probably gonna see something similar, at least for a lot of decks. Either that, or we're gonna gravitate towards decks where there is a right answer often enough that you'll just do the one thing. You'll just always play because that's what your deck wants to do, and you're not really rewarded for discarding so much.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Early days.
Yeah, I think that's like my biggest concern about finding a Winds of Exchange deck that's going to be able to compete at the top tables is that consistency. Like you might have a Winds of Exchange deck that's just it will beat the pants off of almost anything. But if it tokenizes a few of the wrong cards, it may also crumble to anything you're playing in a Vault Tour. And so I have a feeling that some of the best players may not want to take their chances on a deck that, um, it could go 3-3 just if the cards, don't fall their way. Um, I think you want to play something that you feel in control of, and that's why I think we're going to see the consistent decks start to rise to the top as opposed to here's a bunch of berserkers that I have on the board now, and then you have a wipe, and you're like, okay, well, I just lost, all these important cards to my berserkers, and I have nothing to show for it now. Those kind of decks, I think, you know, they're not quite going to be, in my opinion, they're not going to be the ones that rise to the top.
Yeah. And we've got an interesting question in the chat, which kind of actually segues into I think where we wanted to head. I don't know if it's a if we wanted to touch on any of the other efficiency types before, but the question is the inconsistent token rush, like the old Untamed rush with kind of, multiple pixies, Chota, and Untamed, and, if they show up in the right order, then things are great. And if not, then things are not so great. I mean, is there a parallel there, or does this feel a little bit different to you?
I think it's actually pretty similar. I do. I think that's a good observation from Data Forge Stream. Like, I do think that there are some Coda Rush decks that can't lose if they come in the right order. And the one house combo that comes to mind for me is Dish Shadows Untamed. There are so many Dish Shadows Untamed from Coda where if you just get the cards in the right order, you can't lose. Like, it doesn't matter what the SAS is in your deck. Like, I have like a 71 or 72 Coda from that combo, and I've played some games with that where it just feels like the best deck I've ever played in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And it has -1 F, and I play it the next time, and I lose to something that I'm like, I didn't get anything going this game, and I think that's kind of what we're gonna see. So I do think that's a really good comparison. It's for different reasons, but yeah, I think it's gonna feel the same that way.
There may be, I don't know, is there a psychological difference though? There's something about seeing that one card show up as a token underneath it, and you're just like, it's just not going to be. There's no hope for it this game. It's not even like, oh, I could draw into it. It's just like, oh man,
Like
yeah,
you're Numquid the Fair when
like
you're
you're
facing
done with the
down a
fair.
giant warded board.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, been there. That's a tough one, but um, yeah, I don't know. As the opponent, you're watching them as they're like peeking at the cards, and then you see like their face just go like, oh, and they don't have to look at any of the tokens. They've looked at enough,
Always
and you
look at
know
them
right
all
away.
poker face for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great comparison, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think yeah, we're gonna see how some of these more consistent, or what passes for consistent in a Winds of Exchange world looks like. I am interested to see where it goes. I do have a couple that I've been playing that feel very consistent, and those are the two or three that I've really gravitated towards. I have one that I kind of like you're describing. I've played a handful of games with, and when the right half of the deck gets tokenized, it feels unbeatable, right? And when the wrong half of the deck gets tokenized, it just feels like a sad pile of cards, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like I could play that in a best of one, and if I'm hoping to punch up, or maybe try and get lucky, but if I'm going to a vault tour, it's not making the cut, you know?
yeah. I agree. Yeah, and I think most of my Winds of Exchange decks have felt like that so far,
Mm,
where I can't quite get the consistency that I'm looking for out of these decks, no matter how high they can roll.
mm.
Um, Turn one Hallowfest is pretty tough to beat, but if that only happens once every 4 games and the other ones, you know, it doesn't work out, then that's not something that I'm going to be interested in playing long term.
Yeah, interesting. And you figure what? If you've got a two card combo you're trying to line up, you're going to tokenize one of those. I mean, this is very sketchy math, right? But at least one of those, 3/4 of the time, if you're making half your deck into tokens, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it's interesting you mentioned that because at first when the set came out and I was opening my decks, I was actually this is before GOK had any of the stats on there. I was going through and counting how many cards make tokens from this deck, and I got so excited because I had so many that were above average. Like some people in Sanctimonious did some averages where they're like average was like slightly above 8, and some people say like out of 2 displays, their highest they had was like 11, and I had like 5 or 6 decks in my 2 displays that were 12, 13, 14 token makers, which to me was like this is amazing. Like I'm gonna have so many tokens, it's gonna be great. And now as I play it, I'm like, man, like I'm finding more and more that I don't know if it's these specific decks. I should look into that, dig into that data a little bit more. But I'm finding a lot of inconsistency, and maybe it's because I'm gravitating towards these decks that make a ton of tokens. Um, and maybe it's not a coincidence that the decks that make more tokens are also probably the sassier decks, which is perhaps another reason that people are gravitating towards them because the way that the arc scores are calculated for tokens is like your token has its own score, and then it's a multiplier for however many expected tokens you're going to generate. So um, your prospector at 1.25 arc, if you have 15 expected tokens, your prospector alone is going to be worth like around 20 arc,
Mm-hmm.
um, maybe slightly under. And so that's a huge boost to the deck. Whereas if you don't have a prospector, if you have a blorb instead, that's going to take away like maybe 15 points off your SAS, something like that. So that's pretty significant.
Yeah. So it does this inflate the score to, well, let's see, because you have a lot of cards that are just making tokens or have much of the value they're contributing to the deck being wrapped up in the token generation, right? Now, when we're looking at decks of Keyforge, right, at the SAS for a deck, all of that value gets represented in the house where the token resides, right? So I
Right.
see Prospector in this one deck I'm looking at here, 19 times 1.25, and that all filters into Equidon. We got a big old number of 45
Yeah.
for Equidon, which seems high, but I think that's because it's borrowing SAS from the other houses, right?
Yeah.
So like
Yeah,
I look at
exactly.
Sanctum, like 16, like the Sanctum plays really well in this deck, and a lot of what it's doing is also generating, or some of what it's doing is generating tokens. So some of this 45 is really borrowed from the 16 that we're seeing in, or from what the now is 16 that we're seeing in Sanctum, which is interesting
Yeah.
because you think 1.25 as a value for Prospector is still kind of a low value for a card, right? So if you're, I don't know,
Yeah.
Visible
No,
Hand is
it
making two,
is.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if your whole entire deck was filled with 1.25 cards, your SAS would be like 50 something,
Yeah,
45 maybe. I don't know, it depends on
36 plus 8,
yeah,
yeah,
depends
plus
on
a
synergy and
quarter.
things like that. And but yeah, it's not good, like by itself, but it's not a card in your deck. It's just one that you have many ways to just generate. And so like your visible
Mm-hmm.
hand in this situation makes two tokens. It visible hand itself is a zero arc card because it makes two tokens, and so that's essentially a 2.5 because you have two of the prospectors,
Right,
right? So,
right.
um, yeah, there was another type of efficiency we didn't get to yet, which
Mm.
is peaking and rearranging. Lay of the land type cards. There's a few of these in this set. One of them being a token maker itself, the Gruntwork, which I really am a big fan of. Gruntwork having a pip, look at the top three cards of your deck, rearrange them, and then make a token. Really lets you kind of plan out your turn, like especially if you have a Scout Chief in your hand, or you're considering using an uplink for one or two tokens. You maybe like would bury under the bottom the one that you want to draw, and maybe I've actually had cases where I've discarded a Scout Chief if there were two cards there that I wanted to draw. So that kind of efficiency um, is good for planning your tokens specifically. I think like the big part of it, but also just kind of everyone. I think most people have played with Lay of the Land, where you rearrange it and you draw, and sometimes you don't draw a Star Alliance card, but at least you're planning your turn, where you can say like, okay, I'm probably going to go into Shadows next turn, so I'm going to put two Shadows cards on top, leave the Untamed on the bottom, so that I'll just draw that in two turns. Um, and then Future Booster is a really cool one. We could talk
Mm-hmm.
for a bit about um, as an
Yeah.
Omni.
Yeah, I had high hopes for Future Booster. And I actually have a triple Future Booster deck, which is a lot of fun. And I've been definitely experimenting with it. Between, you know, there are modes you can go with it, right? Do I want to try and optimize for tucking the right or the wrong right cards as tokens? Do I want to kind of just focus on stacking the bottom of my deck with one house? Um, which has also benefits of streamlining my upcoming turns, but to a degree. But I like this card a lot. I like that it's an Omni, and especially with the token generation. I have a question for you too, but I'll get your thoughts on it first.
Yeah, I haven't played with it a ton, but I've always liked it. Especially if you have a lot of token generators, it really like takes some of the risk out of that. And like you said, it's great as an Omni. If it were just an action, it would not be very good. Um, but there's a lot of kind of stacking the bottom of your deck where you might have a game plan where you're always going to just put back your Brobnar to the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe your Sanctum to the bottom. Like so you're setting yourself up for a very efficient turn later in the game as well, and that's not just like making sure you don't tokenize an important piece, but also setting up, 3 or 4 turns down the line how you're going to play, what you need at the end.
So yeah, you say you haven't played with it a ton. When you do play with it, or as you're kind of thinking about it, would you tend to use it before making your first token, or after readying and or just before readying and drawing? In other words, do you see yourself optimizing most for not tokenizing key cards or streamlining your future draws?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've thought about it in times when I had the ability to make a token.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what I decide. It's definitely a case by case basis.
Sure.
It depends on the deck. Like, are you digging for a specific card, or yeah, it's a really interesting question. And it's something that you're always going to have to evaluate, like in the moment, because it's going to be different a lot of the times. But having that versatility is really nice. And what's even more is you said you have a deck with 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like you can have both.
You
Um,
can have both. You can have both, and then the interesting thing is, I guess, well, you probably always use the first before making your first token, right? Because you only get value at the end until you hit the card that you don't want to tuck to the bottom. With 3, you're very likely to not, or to come across a house that's not the one you're stacking on the bottom, or something along those lines. So I don't know. I've only played a handful of games with it. It's one of my namesake decks, so kind of fun. Maybe they heard my hot takes about about Starlines being a powerhouse in the set, and we're like,
well,
get this man the future boosters.
they didn't hear any of my hot takes, or at least they don't know anything about me because I didn't get a whirlpool in my name decks. But um,
You got to put Whirlpool in the name. Did you put Whirlpool in the name?
I should have. Apparently, that's the trick.
That's the trick.
The Quixel King came with the Quixel Stone. It cannot be a coincidence.
That's some cool stuff right there. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, that was neat. Um, let's talk about Explorer briefly as another token with some efficiency, where it's just a after reap, peek at the top card of your deck, and I think does it let you discard it? Is that what it does?
Can pull it up.
I can't remember if it's discard or move to the bottom. Um,
Zoc saying that the next custom deck is going to be named Prospector Zoc.
I really hope they do bring back the custom decks again. Like, I hope that's not a one-time thing because I mean that's just universally loved. I'm sure it's logistically difficult for them, but I would pay money for more, and I'm definitely going to put Whirlpool in the name next time I do that.
I would. It would get me jazzed as a prize too. It would be a cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Explorer is after reap. Look at the top card of your deck. You may discard it. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I wish that were an Omni for after reap,
Omni, and an after reap. Yeah.
or maybe just an Omni. I mean, it's kind of an underwhelming token. Only 2 power. It does tend to die fairly quickly. And it's kind of like the Scout Pete. I was never a huge fan of Scout Pete. I definitely can see the uses for him. I always peek, but just discarding it as your only option doesn't feel that good. And with explorers, like if you have like 3 or 4 of them, and the first one finds the card that you want, and you don't want to discard it, then the other ones don't have any value at all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's an interesting point. I could see it being cool as an Omni. I think I'd prefer it as an Omni without an after reap, just to get the off house turn uses.
Yeah,
Um, I want to
like
say
the
that.
the researcher. The
Like
researcher has the Omni Archive of Mars card, which
the researcher.
is very good ability. Um, can either set you up to never play Mars or possibly set you up for like a big psychic network, hypnotic command. That's what I've used it for, is the psychic network. So another token with some efficiency, pretty cool. But Explorer's not bad. There are worse tokens, but it's not my favorite type of efficiency when I'm looking for it.
Yeah, almost because it has a cap. Um, yeah, there's sort of an upper limit to how much efficiency you can gain from the Explorer. You can keep plowing through, but you're yeah, maybe not gaining a ton um,
Yeah.
past a certain point.
And one more card that does this peek and rearrange, which I think is kind of an unsung hero. I actually didn't even realize this card was in the set. I don't know if I have any decks with it, but Navigator Ali.
Mm-hmm.
Navigator Ali was kind of underwhelming in Worlds Collide. Definitely disappointing when compared to like Info Officer Gray, Com Officer Kirby, Garcia, Ingram, and then there's Ali, which at the time you were just like, okay, you rearrange, it doesn't do a ton for you. But now I think it's a very strong ability. It's to me now it's a little bit disappointing that he's an uncommon, because that would be a very good ability to see more often, like in every turn grunt work basically. With tokenization, I think Ali becomes a very good card in this set.
Yeah, Ollie gets some new life. Gets value from the tokenization. There's also the discard the top two of your deck action in Star Alliance. Steal one for each of the houses represented. Um,
That's right.
so yeah, these get lots of extra value. Both Gruntwork and Ollie have some uses. I like Ollie more. We didn't get Book of LAQ back, did we?
I haven't seen it yet. Doesn't mean we don't have it. I was looking actually when I was going through the card list earlier. I'm gonna try to pull it up. I was looking at some of the rares in Star Alliance that existed the set. There's some really good rares. It seems in Star Alliance, and it's a little. I'm glad there are, but it Star Alliance just feels disappointing this set to me. And I think maybe it's because the rares are so like unique and defining, but the commons and uncommons are less so. Um, there's a Gen Order 24, Cultural Exchange, Hings and Gross, Hold the Line. Mirror Shell is an incredible card. Um, Officer Lang, Quixel Stone. So like, there's some really, really like iconic and powerful rares. But it's just kind of a shame that a lot of um, the non rares are a little underwhelming. Alfred Device, Uncharted Lands. Yeah,
It's got a handful that can be good. Like I'm never sad to see recorded history. Um, some of the other future
yeah,
booster. I'm happy. It's a pip if nothing else. It's going to smooth my draws to the rest of the game. That's cool. I think it's got a rough mix of solid and less solid. Less
yeah.
solid. It's probably got the highest
Uh,
quantity of weaker commons in the set.
you
Um,
mentioned recorded history. Maybe the best first turn play in the set.
ooh.
I love it. I will sometimes mulligan for it. Um, if you get it in your opening hand, I mean, you're drawing, what, three cards, and you're gonna have three cards archived most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Might be dirty archives, but that's still really good.
I think dirty archives are fine. I feel like there was a
Yeah,
point when folks were worried about keeping their archives clean. I'm pretty happy to get pretty much anything in my archives at this point. Um, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Note from the chat too, Data for Stream. What would have been the thought if it was an archive instead of a draw on Prospector? If it was better or worse? I'm not sure, but it would still be really good.
Yeah, it
Still be
would.
really
I
good.
think that might be worse actually. I think most people would prefer to have the archive. Um, Although you couldn't use it the same turn. So mass buyout takes a hit. Then I don't know. Maybe that's a good question. Um, it would definitely give some more relevance to the cards like I think Cultural Exchange,
Yeah,
which to me is not that good of a card in this set. I think it's more of a cross set card when you're facing more logos. But Cultural Exchange makes them take all of their cards in their archive back into their hand. Not that big of a deal this set when we talked about how there's so few archiving.
yeah. I guess you smash the scoop up. The scooped up things were claimed, perhaps, but not
Yeah,
the pretty fringe benefits. But yeah, I love.
yeah.
I do love recorded history. I think there is room for Space Invaders to make some strong first turn
Mm,
plays, but yeah,
if you have a lot of creatures,
if you have a lot of
right?
creatures, yeah,
Yeah, and that's you could almost say that's sufficiency because
you're
if you get that first
drawing,
turn, you're drawing a lot more cards, and
drawing a lot more
you may have a
cards.
decent sized board. So
Yeah, and all of the
um,
all of the tokenized all of the cards you tokenize are optional, right? It's not a must. You don't have to tokenize the creatures if you don't want to.
yeah, it's not like Martians make bad allies
Mm-hmm.
where
Mm-hmm.
everything is purged. Um, Yeah, and another card that I just discovered is in this set again too is CXO Tabor,
Yeah,
which provides its own little efficiency, a little slow, but very good card still. Almost a witch, bordering on witch territory, I'd say. um, but yeah, he's got to come back as well. He's the only house cheating card that I could find in this set. Is there another one?
bot.
Okay, yeah, kind of. I mean, you might as well just reap with the bot.
Yeah, fair.
But you're right. You're right.
Other house cheating, that symposium, I
Yeah,
guess.
not it's not playing. Yeah, I'm thinking
Yeah.
playing, I guess.
Yep.
Um, but you're right. Symposium as well. I mean, there's things
Ah,
like Gray Rider, but I'm thinking
playing.
about playing. Like, there's no phase shifts. There's no helper bot. There's CXO Tabor, and I think that's it.
Sandhopper is the only thing else that comes to mind. You get to play
Very
that off
good.
house
Yeah,
creature, but yeah,
that's right. That
hmm
that counts. I'll count that.
count it.
But
It's
there's not much.
there's
There's
definitely
no
not.
Kirby. Yeah, Kirby was a common, in the previous sets, and everyone played Kirby. Everyone was always house cheating with Star Alliance. Now, not so much.
Hmm.
What is Star Alliance's identity this set? Like, we kind of hoped it would be the archiving, but it's not really.
Their mechanical
Um,
identity, yeah.
yeah,
Um, I want to say that they're, even looking at the types of F here, if there's one where they really have a foothold in, it's probably the peak rearrange. Um, they're
yeah,
doing the most of that, right? I mean, you've got transporter platform, which lets you reclaim a tokenized card, which is very cool. Gets some new life in this world. It has splashes of the other things, but I think it's the biggest in terms of the peaking and rearranging. And yeah, maybe we will come to value that more highly too, as folks are seeking out more consistency in their decks, and maybe even at the sake, to forsake some raw power. I don't
yeah,
know. I'm not sold on that idea yet, but I think that's kind of where they're most firmly encamped. Mm-hmm.
yeah. We talked a lot about Sandhopper, but Transporter Platform has always been a great card, and it is great in new ways, the set. So, always very happy to see a Transporter Platform in WoE.
I do think Sandhopper is stronger in this set, though. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
totally.
Yeah, just
Um,
being able to play a creature as well, um, is it's pretty big. A lot of things you can do with that.
mm-hmm. Totally. 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 Yeah.
Did we touch on the consistency enough? Because the consistency, like one of the cards that you had brought up earlier, with like efficiency and consistency was Igor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Igor is something that no one's ever hesitated to play, for fear of discarding cards. And I can probably count on one hand the number of times that I've used the Igor and found like two things that I really needed, and had to discard one. But it's pretty rare.
It's rare, and I think there's an interesting parallel between Igor or the I don't know if there are other effects, none coming to mind, where you look at a bunch, discard the rest, and keep one. I mean,
Mm. Dilophosaurus, but that lets you keep two.
yeah, and even the one that gets just is a one discarded.
One discard, one archive, one hand.
Okay, so sure, but keep losing one of three feels much less bad. Oh, maybe more boon more often than not. Um, I guess you could make a case for things like the shadows card that discards your top five, and they're gone, and you get an amber for each of the shadows cards there.
Rigged lottery.
Rigged
Yeah.
lottery, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some things along that, but yeah, I don't know. As I was thinking about it, it did feel like there was this parallel between Igor and the token making, but maybe it just was in such low volume. Like I would never hesitate to play an Igor. Like I'll jam those
Yeah.
Igors all day. If I see another Igor, probably
Absolutely.
taking that and playing it into the next Igor.
Yep. Yep.
you know, but there's a similar thing too, where you're going to blow by some cards, and now they're not in your experience for this pass through the deck, and that has on occasion bitten me. I have zero regrets for playing Igors, though, and probably never will. But or will hesitate. But yeah, there. I don't know. It feels kind of analogous to token generation. in that way, but maybe maybe there's just such a higher volume that it's not as much of an issue, or not even
Yeah,
something that's been on folks' minds. Yeah,
I think it's similar, but I think having the choice with Igor is a
the
big
choice is
difference.
huge. The big differentiation.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's very fair. Um, yeah, we're gonna be interesting world. So I mean, you're going to be seeing a whole lot more cards on the field, right? But at the same time, it does feel like there's a shift in the consistency story for a lot of decks.
yeah,
Um, and I don't know. Do we want to get into that? I think we were a little long. That might have been the next kind of step, but we could save it too.
yeah. I think we've touched on most of it. But the consistency is, you know, it's different, right? Like, were you kind of like heading towards the like the cousins? You referred to them as cousins earlier. Is that kind
Mm-hmm.
of where you're going right now?
Yeah, it does feel like there's related. They're related. I mean, you talk about efficiency, but efficiency to what end? Am I just trying to get more cards played because I don't know. I'm maybe on some level equating Amber Generation to just raw volume of cards played. That may be true for some decks, especially some of the the really really pip heavy logos mass mutation decks where you're like there's kind of this I don't know, massive cards that are roughly equivalent in power level. They've all got pips. They all draw things or archive things, and I'm just kind of zooming through them. Um, but in terms of like setting up turns, I mean, I think there's a much different story around handcrafting. There's a much different story around, setting yourself up for longer term plays in this set. And I don't know if I fully kind of cracked the impact on
Yeah,
those either with respect to the types of efficiency that we have access to now, or the marquee mechanic. How that plays into. Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's very skill testing, I would say. I haven't cracked it either. I don't know if anyone has, and that's kind of the big reason why um, I didn't want to play any WoE at the Philly Vol Tour, was because it just felt like there was too many nuances to this set that I wasn't comfortable with, having just had it for like 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it was. Wasn't enough time to really um, figure that out and crack that. But um, you know, to talk a little bit more about the consistency, you don't need efficiency for consistency. Like, you can have redundancy, and we could probably talk about this for an entire episode. But one of my favorite decks, in the deck that I played at the Vault Tour, is a Worlds Collide deck, which, I know, don't laugh, I play Worlds Collide too sometimes. It has no logos. Its only efficiency that it has is two Lay of the Land and a Spears. I think that's it. But it's a highly consistent deck because it has a lot of redundancy. It's got like two copies of Unnatural, two copies of Red Alert, two copies of Nature's Call, two copies of Chain Gang, and all of this kind of the redundancy makes it more consistent. I know I'm always going to draw creature control. I know I am gonna have, like, a few Star Alliance bodies that will stick around if I want them to. It has two encounter suits. It has just like a weird number of doubles throughout the deck, which makes it consistent despite not having very much efficiency. Um, so I would love to see some decks like that in WoW that, they're not going to stand out from a high F score on the page, but there are, you know redundancies in what types of cards they have. Like, you might have a mass buyout and a what's the one that destroys non tokens?
Oh, I know the one you mean, but the name's eluding me. Yeah,
Yeah,
destroys non-tokens, gives you two chains, a chain, something like that.
I think so, something like that. Market crash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like seeing similar type cards like that that are clumped to give you a similar effect, where you may not be able to draw your whole deck in a game, but at least you have a better chance of hitting what you need. Having a couple copies of some artifact control, a couple copies of Rant and Rive, that kind of thing. Like, that's what I would be looking for, I think, for a consistent low deck that doesn't necessarily have efficiency.
Yeah, the duplicates similar to what VC has. and this strategic consistency as well, where the cards may not be duplicated, but you have a lot of cards that are pushing towards the same goal and don't necessarily rely on um, any one specific card to show up to achieve that goal. Yeah,
Right.
I think we'll see a lot of decks like that kind of rising to the top. I definitely am putting Yalathenel. So how would you say this name? Quick draw.
Uh, I yeah, I think
Yalathenel. I don't know.
Yalanthal. I
in
don't know.
in that camp, I mean, it's got 3 copies of Rant and Rive, so you can afford to tokenize one of them, and a whole lot of the rest of the deck is capturing, right? So it's just like, hey, did you go above 8? Nope. Okay, I'm going to capture some, and then
Yeah,
you get to 6. Okay, you can have some captured amber back, and we're going to Rant and Rive, and it just does that an awful lot. But I mean, between the duplicates of Rant and Rive, the many and varied ways of capturing, and the Sandhopper, I mean, I think we'll see decks like this. I mean, I don't know if this is, I mean, an early days pull. I think there's going to be much stronger things that come out, but I think it's kind of alluding to what some of the stronger Winds of Exchange decks are going to look like. Yeah.
yeah. This is very much your style as well. Like a little bit grindy.
Mm-hmm. Soul
Daring
crushing.
someone.
No.
Yeah, like because you think like I'm going to go to 7 and show you you can't rant and rive me, and then you like capture 2, or um,
Yep.
sometimes when you see these, you just have to power through. Be like, all right, go ahead and use your first rant and rive. That's fine, and put them in uncomfortable situations where they like maybe they don't want to go to Brobnar, but they want to get some value out of it.
Yeah. This is a,
But
this is a PSA for the folks listening. Quick Draw is 100% right. Like, you got to power through some of these. I think I've played a lot of games with this deck where my opponent will end with no keys and like 3 amber, but because they didn't want to draw out the Rant and Rives and allowed them to
yeah,
stockpile, or for the uh, the other amber control options to build. Yeah,
yeah. And I know you've got the Sandhopper, but how many times have you tokenized the rant and rives when you really needed to draw them?
it happens. It definitely happens. The one benefit is a card that has value as a threat and doesn't necessarily need to be played. Uh, you don't mind as much when it gets tokenized, right? So if you're stopping at 7 instead of going to 12,
Hmm.
I still got some value out of the Rant and Rive, even though it was tokenized. I don't know, and
Yeah,
I didn't have to chain myself with holding a TMTP and deciding not to play it when you went to 7,
right.
which is
Yeah,
interesting.
it's very. This is off topic, but this is very different than playing against TMTP and Graft, where TMTP and
Yes.
Graft, I'm not going to tell you to just power through and hope they don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
The worst that can happen here is you lose a few more amber, but you make them play their card. You make them burn some of the resources that they're going to be able to use later. And maybe not every deck that you play against with Rant and Rive is going to have as much capture as this one does, which is this is actually pretty. It's a deceiving amount of capture. Like it doesn't look like it's that much capture, but it's very consistently able to do it. The puzzling trinket being like a big reason
Mm-hmm.
why.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which
Yeah.
puzzling trinket turns the amber pips into capture, damage, or draw.
Yep. So it turns the yeah it gives you your choice of how to resolve
Yeah,
among the other bonus icons, your amber pips. Yeah.
yeah, very strong,
Very
very
strong.
cool deck. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I think that's it from me as far as this. I definitely want to start to reconsider making tokens whenever I'm digging for something. I'm already targeting Sandhopper, Transporter Platform type decks, just to give me the ability to take something back if it's like, oops, I didn't want to do that. Um, so yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking for as far as where I'm finding my efficiency. And Strange Shell, I'm very excited to explore more. I think there's a lot of possibilities with Strange Shell decks, especially considering, as someone mentioned in chat earlier, how strong Equidon is in general. Like you get a
Mm-hmm.
Strange Shell deck, you're probably going to have a decent house in Equidon anyway, at least.
Yeah. And I think the flip side to what you were saying with Sandhopper, I mean, I'm also really looking more, mm, really hoping more to see artifact control in my decks than I was before. I
Mm,
I think that the artifacts in general as a whole in this set are pretty strong. Maybe a notch up in previous sets. Not that there weren't individually stronger artifacts around, but just as a whole, each individual, each of the artifacts are just a lot better. There are very few duds. They're usually impactful. Whether it's a sandhopper, whether it's a puzzling trinket,
Even a crystal hive.
even a crystal hive. Yeah,
You have to
crystal
get rid of
hive.
that crystal hive if they have Mars tokens.
And the Duma, what is it, Martyr? No, Prayer to Duma?
Him to Duma.
Him to Duma,
Him,
thank you.
yeah.
Can be backbreaking if left.
Hmm.
So, yeah, looking more closely at decks that have the hard R2. Either that or a key cheat, I think, is kind of where you want to be. But
Yeah. Token of appreciation here from Yalathanel.
Him to Duma, thank you, chat. Yeah, and a big reason for that too is a lot of these kind of non-logos efficiency options are going to rely on the artifacts as well, right? Your sandhoppers, your transporter platforms, your record histories,
Yeah.
even Him to Duma or Offering to Kilagog are efficiency of a sort, or options of a sort. I don't know, depending on the deck. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, very cool. Very good.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, quick draw. I don't know. Do you have a quick $1 billion plan, $5 blunder for us this evening? Did you come prepared, or are you resting on
I
your
did
laurels?
not. No, I did not come prepared. Which
Just
is to
perfect
say
plays
that
all week.
I haven't made any mistakes all week. It's been a great week.
That's going to get you kicked off the team. No mistakes. I got one actually. From playing a game with Murph, actually. I was playing Danazag, a deck which we know and love, and I was resolving first Igor, and put 2 copies of Life for Life in my discard pile, and I said, "Oh, this is great because I do have Brend in my hand, but I've also got ZYX Researcher." So while I had to let Life for Lifes go because I forget what I took, some logos thing that I would need to play this particular turn, I was like, I'll get to tuck the Life for Life into my archives, right? So I played the ZYX Researcher and then clicked on deck instead of archives, or instead of discard pile. Mm-hmm. And
one of those things that you would never do in real life.
Yeah, and it was it was a bummer too, because I immediately got brand new information. Like I saw the card that was archived from deck, so it's like it's a misclick, but like I definitely gained information from it, and it's not a rewindable thing. Can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah.
So sad times, but womp womp womp.
You know where I thought that was going? I thought you were going to say that you were going to put them in the discard and you were going to play the ZYX, but then you realized that you had played the Igor off of a wild wormhole, and the wild wormhole would have went on top. That's where I thought that was going.
Yeah, wormhole and shark always messing up my researcher plays. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're tough.
They're tough. Cool. Well, that sounds good. Should we wrap things up? I think there's a word from our sponsors coming. Unless you have anything else before we transition there.
Let's hear from the sponsors this week.
Cool. Well, this episode of Bottom of the Beaker is sponsored by Cyberclone Hair Gel. So introducing Cyberclone Hair Gel, the future of hairstyling. Unleash your inner tech-savvy trendsetter with our revolutionary formula that effortlessly clones any desired hairstyle. Say goodbye to bad hair days and embrace a sleek, cyber chic look. Upgrade your mane, upgrade your game with Cyberclone Hair Gel. Available now for a limited time only. So thank you very much, Cyberclone Hair Gel. Thank
you.
Excellent. Indeed. And folks, episodes of Bottom of the Beaker are recorded live 9:30 Eastern right here at twitch.tv/sloppylabwork. You can find archives of our past shows over at YouTube. We're at Sloppy Labwork over there. And for the very best content, distilled 57 times, and then scrape from the bottom of the beaker. Search for that very phrase in your podcatcher of choice, and we'll be there, logos or not, with a nice, efficient hug for you. So, any last words, quick draw for the folks getting off at the final audio stop?
I hope you all enjoyed this one on some efficiency without logos, and stay sloppy out there.
Stay sloppy out there. Cool. All right, folks. Well, what should we play tonight, Quick Draw?
I guess we're gonna play some WoE probably.
Probably
Um,
some two logo stacks.
the two logo stacks. Yeah, let's just go play Coda. Um, we could also raid DataForge stream and see what's going on over there. ABR adaptive match happening.
Oh, that's
Um,
not a bad idea, actually.
I don't know how you're feeling about playing. So the reason that I am avoiding potentially playing a game is that you have kicked my butt so many times this week with your strange shells and your prospectors that I don't know if I can put up a good enough fight with any of my somewhat efficient Winds of Exchange decks. Um, yeah,
I think that's
just being
excusable.
honest.
I think that's excusable, and it is getting late over here, so we can send over some. Oop! Oh no! Oh no! We can send over some love to DataForce stream. Sorry, folks, extra sloppy there.
Moving me to the middle. I don't know why.
I don't know. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, can I figure out how to do it? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, we're gonna send a raid over there. Hope DataForge stream is ready for this in 30 seconds once I
I hope he's
figure it
playing
out.
prospectors as well.
Oh yeah, it is a for this. It
Actually, let's
is
find
a
out what he's playing.
okay,
Let
let's
me
see.
see if I can find that. Where's this game?
Looks like I see there is
Could be in. Here it is.
Equidon's Oxide. Yeah. Ooh, looks like Brobnar tokens on the other side for Strascore, huh?
Wonder which game number this is. So not a very efficient deck from Drazcore. Saurian, Barabnar, Double Rant and Rive. Talk about some consistency. Double Rick Nasty, Double Krog the Clumsy.
Ooh,
Looks like a pretty cool deck. Heavy subsidies. Ooh, you love your heavy subsidies.
I do really like heavy subsidies. That's cool and adaptive too. Makes it really interesting.
Yeah, wish I had a heavy subsidies deck. I don't.
I've opened a few, interestingly enough, and including a double heavy subsidies deck, which is pretty fun. But yeah, all right, we'll send folks on over there. Maybe jam a game, maybe not. But thanks y'all for hanging out with us.
Yeah.
We'll call it a night.
We'll just chalk it up as a loss for me. We'll just call it that.
Right on. All right, should be in 5, 4, 3. Yeah, thanks folks for hanging out.